flying was too good, man.
Woo! All right, we are live on the air. YouTube is in the house. What's up, everybody? So glad that you're here. You're here with paraglidingtalk.com. Tonight we have a great show. We're gonna have Ivan with us. Ivan, how do you say your last name? I don't want to mess it up.
It's Guajardo.
Guajardo. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're joined also by Neil. Neil is Pair Perspective on YouTube and no stranger to the show. So we're going to have a great time tonight. My name is Robert Michaels. I'm a P3, and I've got something like 70 hours, maybe more than that. And I was inspired from a video that I saw on YouTube some time ago and started my adventure in flying. And so I thought it would be cool if we started the show. And so here we are talking about all things flying, paragliding, hang gliding, paramotoring. And me and Ivan before the show, we're talking a little bit about sailplanes and Warner Springs. So we're going to talk about all these things tonight. Just a quick plug, if you're interested in seeing the past interviews, you can go check those out at paraglidingtalk.com and then look at the past episodes. And we've had some pretty cool ones. Gavin McClurg was one of them. I won't spoil it. And just to give you a quick shot, next week's show is going to be different. It's not going to be on Thursday night, so don't look for it on Thursday night. Next week's show is going to be on Friday night. This is going to be a one-off, but it's because we're going to have Woody Gamertag. Woody's Gamertag is a YouTuber and a paramotor pilot and just an all-around cool guy. And I was shocked that he responded to my request. He has a 1.1 million subscribers. And so I laughed when he actually responded to my comment on one of his videos, and I said, hey, would you like to come on the show? And he said yes. And he said, but I can't do it on Thursday. So we're going to do it Friday night at 6 o'clock, and we're going to have a great time. All right. So without any more delay, really appreciate everybody who's logged in. The chat's already going crazy. Give a shout out to the regulars that come out and come on, and really appreciate you guys. Thanks, Pair Perspective, for always hosting and coming on as a moderator. It's such a relief and help. So, Ivan,
anytime.
You've shared some incredible pictures with me. You sent the email to me, and I opened it up, and I'm like, what in the world? This guy, you have like been around the world. And so I wanted to first off, let everybody know you're a paraglider pilot.
That's right.
Yeah. You also fly tandems. I saw you fly a tandem at Torrey, so I know that you're no rookie. And so maybe we just start off like we normally do, asking you, how did you find out about paragliding? How did you get into it? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a paragliding pilot, a P4. I do tandems, and I got into it like, half the things guys do because of a girl. I'm a welding inspector. That's my trade. And so I was in a fabricating shop, and there's actually a local paragliding pilot. She was showing all the guys pictures of her flying. And I just kind of looked over her shoulder and I said, hey, that's pretty cool. Why don't you just, give me a call and let me know next time you go out? And sure enough, she did. And one of our local tandem and hotshot pilots, Dave Metzger. I don't know if you've ever met him.
Oh yeah, Dave.
He's one of the few guys in the world that does parahawking and all that.
Yeah.
And I did my very first tandem flight with him at Blossom, one of our local sites, and it happened to be with an Egyptian vulture. So my first experience was thermal flying, a couple thousand feet above the ground, and this giant Egyptian vulture landing on my hand. Wow. And so it was just this insane sensory overload that I had. And this is my first flight. I was petrified. My hands were shaking. The bird was looking at me like, dude, you're fine. Just chill. And so that was it, man. After that, I had to do it again. And a couple months later, I signed up at Torrey Pines, and then I just started, going through the motions of just flying.
Man, So you started your training at Torrey Pines. Take us through that. You go up to the counter, you slap your wallet on the counter, you say, I want to fly. What's it going to take? And go from there.
Pretty much. Brianna, the pilot that I told you introduced me to the sport, she had already kind of talked me through the motions, and I just showed up one day, and I was like, all right, well, what do I do? And right next to me, Max and his wife Karina, Max Merriam, local actor hotshot.
We got Max coming on the show too.
Oh, nice.
29th.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And so, yeah, they were looking at some magazines and pictures of places in Colombia and all over the world. And I was like, I've been there. And so Karina says, well, we got to get you signed up. And so I signed up, and it was just, the first few days were, I guess, 2-3 days were a little rough. I thought it wasn't for me. I came from a pretty athletic background, and I couldn't understand this whole kiting thing. I didn't understand it. And then one day, this other pilot, like my third or fourth day into just ground handling, a guy who you had last week, Ryan Bloom, he shows up and he's like, well, here, let me help you. And he only said 2 or 3 words, and whatever reason, those 2 or 3 words clicked, and all of a sudden I knew how to kite. And I was like, okay, I can keep doing this. And so, 6 years later, yeah, here I am flying.
6 years. So just so you guys know, and if you're just chiming in, this came down to the last second, and so Ivan gets home from flying. He has to land, okay, get in his car, drive all the way to his house, gets to his house, and the internet is shut off at his house. So he grabs his laptop, takes off to his brother's house, and makes it just in time.
I went to my neighbors first, and then and I was screaming, hey, you got internet? And like 3 of my neighbors come out. I'm like, no, we don't have any internet either. So I'm like, shit, damn. And I just book it 2 blocks to my brother's house, and here I am. This is, this isn't my place. This is my brother's place.
That is so funny. So the neighbors are like, no free Wi-Fi.
No free Wi-Fi, pretty much, man. Get out of here. Go to the cafe 3 blocks away. I was like, well, I got a place 2 blocks away. I'm going to go there.
No free Wi-Fi. Get a job, you bum. It's so funny.
Pretty much.
So, by the way, Blossom, they were saying was pretty good for like an hour. So they got to fly. Ivan was working right down the street from there. And so I'm super jealous because I had to work. Some of us do have to work. He was working down there, for the record. What were you doing, by the way? You were inspecting welds over there?
Yeah, they were laying down some pipe for the water, county water authority or something along those lines, and they do it in sections. So every time they put a section in, they got to weld it up, and I go in and check it.
And that's pretty cool. Maybe we'll talk about that in the after show, and because I'm interested in that. I love welding and all that. Did you hear about that pipe break, the gas line?
Off the 163?
Ooh,
yeah, some inspector's going to get chewed out for that one, man. I tell you, that's it's not me, though.
20-inch round natural gas pipe. I think they hit it with didn't they hit it with a backhoe or something?
Oh, is that what happened? I don't know.
I think so. I don't know. But I was like, ooh, because that guy's lucky, by the way. But anyways, so you get into this routine of Torrey Pines. You show up Torrey Pines, you're kiting, you got an instructor, you're on radio. Talk to us about maybe if you can go back. I know it's 6 years ago, but that first feeling of launching off and what was going through your mind and that progress, because there's a lot of people in here that want to know about all these guys are asking about my nose. The trash can.
I was wondering.
Trash can.
So I have this big old sheet of glass
that I
was throwing away in the trash can at work. And I go to throw it in. Well, there's a stick holding the lid open. And I'm such a dummy. I hit the stick out as I'm reaching in, and the lid just right in my face. Yeah.
Man.
It actually looks really good compared to what it was, because I was like, my whole face was covered in blood. It was horrible.
Oh, man. Well, I was coming up with all sorts of scenarios because about 2 weeks ago I had the same scratch, but it was my girlfriend. I don't know. No, it's not what you're thinking.
So don't have to call the cops.
Yeah.
No.
That's what the guys at work were like. Yeah, right. Your wife did that. So I'll roll with whatever. Wife.
Don't get in a fight with a trash can anymore, bud.
Yeah. Lost. Don't fight the trash can. Oh man. So yeah, you launch you're in the air first time. Take us through that.
Yeah. My first solo flight, I had Max Merriam on radio. And for those of you guys who know who Max is, he's just the calmest guy you could possibly imagine. And so I launch and I just kind of phase out. I don't know what's going on. I am blank and I'm drifting into the cliff. And so in typical Max fashion, he starts off real calmly. Ivan, you need to move away from the cliff. Ivan, you need to move. And I go under sensory overload. All I see is just the ground, like 300, 400 feet below me. And I didn't know what I was doing. I froze. And so I just started drifting into the cliff. And then before I know it, Max is screaming at the top of the lungs, which is something that never happens with Max. He's just not a screamer. Ivan, get away from the cliff. And it clicked, and I came to my senses, like, oh damn, okay, I got to get away from here. And and so I came back to the realm of reality, and I realized what was going on. And so the kiting that I had been doing for the last 3-4 days, it came into effect, and it was pretty easy at that point. You just you pull left to go left, you pull right to go right, and Max, my instructor, he was just talking me through everything. And he really, even though I'm the one that was in the harness, Max was doing the flying. And that's how it is when you're a student. You're not truly flying for a while. I mean, your instructor's telling you everything, step by step. And as you get better, he says less and less until you're just flying on your own.
Yeah, that's epic, man. To get Max to yell, bro, you must have been really close, because I watched a handful of guys that were the whole the group went to Horse. I don't know if you were there that day, and he had this one guy that could not launch. I mean, for the life of him, he just could not do it every time. And I think the last time he just totally biffed it in the bushes, was all tangled in the bushes. And Max was like, all right, we're done. That's enough. And the whole time he was super chill. And every time the guy would go, we were just like, oh gosh. Oh, this guy's gonna die. And horses know, that's the big boy sight. That's big boy flying there. Right. And what's funny? And now that we talk about it, there's a few guys on here that know about horse. It's like one of the original learning sites, like where these guys go and learn. It's crazy. And
that's crazy because back then the technology and the designs were not what they are today at all.
Right.
I mean, it's just to think that that's where they started. It's like, what are you thinking, man? Wow. You guys got, guts of steel here, and respect.
Because the hang pilots, they've got a little bit, I don't want to say that they have an advantage because I'm a paraglider pilot, but they have like an advantage where they can just kind of cut through some of the rotor and the crap that's created right there off the launch. But those original gliders, man, that's what I learned on, was one of those original gliders.
Hey, well, you made it out of that phase, brother. You're here.
It was made by hand.
Yeah.
We lost Pair Perspective. Where did he go? I think he was saying that he was having technical difficulties. So they're buried in snow right now, along with a few of you guys that are in the chat. I feel bad for you guys. I'm going to try to send him another invite. We'll just see if we can get him back here. Pair. There we go. Boom. Send. Yeah. So you get to this place now where you're like, okay, Torrey Pines is kind of, I've heard it said, they call it Torrey Pines, because, it's nothing really exciting. You're not going to get whacked by thermals. The most exciting thing that you're going to have is, some wash from a tandem. You know, you're gonna get thumped from the, you know what I'm saying? You get
Yeah,
weight.
but sometimes it'll get a little bit of high wind. It might get a little, you know, it's not, it is flying, but you know, it is what it is. It's coastal soaring. It's beautiful. It's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
But after a while, you're looking for a little more.
So
You know,
let's talk about that. At what point were you like, okay, you know what? Let's take it to the next level. Or was it with the instructors that you went with the group? Or take us through that.
You know, at the time, Torrey Pines was kind of going through these transitions where the instruction outside of Torrey wasn't very good. As far as, I mean, they would teach you how to fly Torrey, but they wouldn't teach you how to, you know, fly anywhere else. And I started getting a little frustrated with that, and I started venturing off on my own into to some of the local sites, Blossom, Little Black, Palomar, and I would just kind of watch the locals, and I would wait for the calm conditions. And as I improved, I got into a little bit rowdier wind, and you know, in the process of from P1 to P3, I think I had instructional flight with a Torrey instructor in the mountains once. And it was by accident because I showed up at Blossom and Ryan Bloom happened to be there. And he asked me, hey, well, do you have your radio? I said, yeah. And so, you know, he went on radio. But at the time, Torrey wasn't doing too much outside of Torrey. And so I just I'm kind of self-taught as far as the mountains go, just kind of following the locals around and just being as safe as I can and slowly pushing myself a little more into rowdier, stronger conditions. So, yeah.
Nice. Ryan's a great guy. I bet you you were able to learn a lot from him.
Yeah, just trying to follow him around is next to impossible. And you know, every once in a while, you keep up with him and you learn something. And there's, you know, there's a lot of pilots like that. It's I think Southern California and San Diego has a high standard. You know, there's a lot of ranges of good pilots and better pilots, but I think San Diego and Southern California has a high standard of quality of pilots.
Yeah, I agree. There's some incredible. Every time I go, I see someone that is well respected in the paragliding community, and I'm always. It's what's really encouraging to me is how cool everybody's been from the very beginning. It's like a family almost. It's like, I mean, even. Like these guys on the in the chat, and you guys that have been watching the videos, and maybe you're watching after it's not live or whatever, but it's like a family. I don't know, man, because we're such a small community, and because, you know, there is that dimension of danger involved, and so everybody's kind of on the same page. We're all risking our lives. It's like you know, racing motorcycles or something. You've got that camaraderie, and but there's such a closeness because it's not a competition. I mean, for the most part, we're all just out there to enjoy it.
Yeah, go back home, you know, and just live off that high that we just experienced, and that's, you know, that's what paragliding is, man. Just a bunch of good friends and just get your feet off the ground.
Yeah. So let's talk about the adventure. So you go to Blossom, you start flying Blossom. This was, you know, probably before you got your rating to P3, P4,
right?
Which I love Blossom. That is my favorite site, just because there's, you know, on a crappy day, no one's there. You can just take a sledder and hike back up, do it again. Same thing with Little Black. I learned almost everything at Little Black. And, you know, same thing, just like you, wait until the conditions are really calm. One of the guys at Torrey was actually, he was the one that encouraged me. He's like, listen, as long as you don't launch before 5, you're fine. Just let it rip. And it was so true. I mean, and you progress into, like you said it well, progress into the stronger and stronger winds. And the main thing is learning the weather. But let's take it to that next level. You decided, okay, I'm going to do some flying. I'm going to go in the mountains. At what point were you like, let's do some XC stuff, and talk to us about that a little bit?
Well, you know, XC there's different styles. You know, you got acro, you got XC, you got sight soaring, and they're all different. One of the things about XC is you can be the best thermal pilot in the world, but if you're not willing to look over the back of that mountain and just go for it and say, you know what, it doesn't matter where I land, what time I get home, how I get back home. And that's one of the main things. And that I when it came to paragliding, I hit the ground running. I improved really fast in the beginning, but then when it came time to take that next step to look over the back of that mountain and say, all right, I gotta go, I kind of put a mental block on myself. And I'm a good pilot, but I haven't done a whole lot of XC. And the times I have done it, I've been, for the few times that I've done it, I've been pretty successful because I'm good thermaler, and I'm safe, and I really fight every bit of lift that I can get. But just because I haven't exposed myself to as much XC as some of these other guys, I haven't done a whole lot of it, you know.
So
but
when was the first? What was the site that you went over the back first?
It was actually, I think it might have been in Mexico. I had just gotten my P3. I was in Tapalpa. It's a big site. It's like it's almost like Valle de Bravo. It's a big site. You get big air. And I was out there, and I look back on where I was then, and I think, man, I didn't belong in that kind of, you know, in those conditions. What was I doing? And so I got, you know, as a pilot, we all have those 2 or 3 thermals that we're going to remember for the rest of our lives. And my first one was right there in Tapalpa. And
a few of you guys that are in the chat, feel bad for you guys.
Hey, what's up, Trey?
I'm going to try to send him.
What's up, guys?
How you doing, man?
What's up, Trey?
Get him back here.
How's it going, Trey?
I can hear the show in the background. Can you you got that? I think, do you do it with headphones, Trey? Might be a little delay. Can you hear me now? Trey's like, just shut it down. Trey's a paramotor pilot. He's in I think he's buried in snow right now too. Is that right, Neil?
More than likely, yeah. He's not too terribly far from me, like 8 hours or something. So
he's got the brows, the eyebrows are down. I have a feeling he hasn't been able to fly since the last video.
It's worth it, but after a while, you're looking for a little more. So let's talk about that.
I'm gonna put Trey on.
Okay.
I'm gonna just mute him for a second here.
yeah, we'll get that straightened out.
Yeah, we'll work that out. So you go over the back at a major site in Mexico.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, so my first fear would be like, okay, if I land somewhere, I don't speak very good Spanish. You speak Spanish, I assume?
I'm Mexican, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So that wasn't an issue.
Just because you're Mexican doesn't mean, I know some guys that are Mexican and I speak better Spanish than them.
That's well, I grew up in Mexico.
Okay.
So I still have the language, but yeah, it was.
So you go over the back. How'd it go? What happened?
Well, basically, what happened is I was doing, worse than everybody on the hill. I was a few feet away from sinking out. I have my LZ picked out, and then I just take this huge collapse, followed by a huge lift, and I just start skyrocketing up. There's just this vertical elevator up, and I lost directional control. But then somewhere along the point, I regained and I started turning, and I just started climbing and climbing and climbing. And then this huge gaggle of vultures starts circling with me. And so on one end of the thermal, there's just like 10 vultures looking at me, and I'm on the other end of the thermal circling with him, and I'm like, man, you guys aren't gonna get me today, man. I'm pulling through this one. So
they're gonna eat you.
So I go up like 5,000 vertical feet, and then I just look over the back, and it was all flat land behind the launch, and I said, why not? And so I just went, and I went, and I went, and then I started fighting all this little lift that I kept getting over these power lines, and for whatever reason, the power lines were giving off little thermals, but I was petrified because these were major high tension power lines I was flying over. And so I just picked my way through. It wasn't very far, but you know, that was my first cross country flight. I landed, and then I don't know, whatever. An hour later, I got picked up by the retrieve. So that was my first time going over the back. But it was cool, man. And I had Max cheering me on. He was up about 15,000 feet.
That was going to be my next question. What were you with some locals? So that's cool. Max
I was with,
there too?
yeah, he did a flying tour down in Mexico, one of his favorite spots down there. And I was with a group of pretty experienced pilots, and so Max was on the radio cheering me on, and I went as far as I could, but yeah, you know, that was my first time.
Man.
Carl Colorado in the chat wanted to know if you had any crazy stories after landing XC.
I've had a couple of interesting crash landings in Guatemala, in Italy. As far as getting back, actually, I did have a really funny one with Ryan. We didn't go very far, but it was this was at a Blossom. This is a hilarious story because we went over the back, and the winds just started pushing us in this kind of weird direction away along this really long reservoir, El Capitan Reservoir. And so we ended up landing like 5 miles away from the nearest road. And so we started hiking back. It's about 95 degrees in the summertime. You know, this is Southern California, desert conditions. And so we're dehydrated, and we make it to the edge of the reservoir. And so we start waving down these fishing boats. And so finally this guy approaches us, and he picks us up, and I scream at Ryan, come on, get down, because he was up on top of the hill. So Ryan's crashing down the hill through the bushes with his gear, and I'm throwing my stuff in this little fishing boat. And the fisherman, he started getting a little worried because he just sees a couple of dudes with large bags rushing towards his boat. and this is kind of like
drugs.
Yeah. And this is kind of like redneck, you know, gunslinging country. And so the guy was just like, oh, hey, Ryan, why don't you slow down a bit, man? You know, let's just, you know, chill. We got in the boat, and he asked us what we're up to, and we explained to him. And so we're like, hey, all right, well, I'll give you a ride back to the dock. And right before we left, I noticed this giant figure in the water. And I was like, hey, dude, what's that? And the fisherman takes a look, and there's this giant, like, just huge catfish just floating there. And so he says, all right, well, let's go check it out. So he pulls out this giant catfish out of the water, and we realize that there's another fish stuck in its mouth with a tail hanging out. And so he pulls the catfish into the boat. And so we're trying to pull this up because the catfish was still alive, and it was still kind of barely breathing. So we try and save it by yanking out this dead fish that was inside the catfish's mouth. The moment the fish comes out, it's like this rotting stench just kind of fills the whole boat area. Ooh. And the fisherman starts puking all over his boat.
What? What in the world?
The fisherman's puking all over the boat. Ryan's cracking up. I'm about to puke because I'm downwind from the stench. There's this half-rotted fish and half-alive giant catfish. And so, you know, it was just kind of really weird. It was just surreal. It's like came out of nowhere. We go on this little mini cross-country flight. We get stuck out in the middle of nowhere. We get picked up by a fisherman who looked like he wanted to shoot us. And then we pick up a half-dead catfish with another fish in its mouth. We're pulling it out. The fisherman's puking. I'm about to puke. Ryan's cracking up. So,
where's the GoPro video? I need this on Go.
Actually, Ryan he's got the video.
Are
he's
you
got some
serious?
of it. Yeah, I think he's got some of the video.
What?
And so anyway, long story short, he gives us a ride back to the dock, and we hang out for a while, and our retrieve comes and picks us up. So yeah, that's one little story.
That's wild.
And that was just a local one. I had a crazy crash landing in Guatemala a few years ago. I was flying this 1999 Swing Arcus that I rented. So for those of you guys wondering, don't ever rent gear in a third world country. You go to Mexico, Guatemala, don't do it. It's not worth it. Just, you know,
That's good wisdom right there, bro.
That's sound solid advice there.
If we don't get nothing else out of this show, I'm putting that one in the books. Never rent.
So awesome. I'm on launch looking over this beautiful volcanic lake in Guatemala, and my first attempt at kiting the wing, it comes up like a piece of cloth, like a sheet, like something you put over yourself to go to sleep. And I thought maybe I'm just not pulling hard enough. And I was still pretty green at the time. And so I get off the hill, and right away on my first turn, I spin the wing. And for those of you who don't know what spinning is, basically you stall half of the wing. And so I'm just kind of spinning out of control. But it was such a steep mountain that I had plenty of ground clearance. I recovered. I flew around, really scared for a while. And when I'm coming in for a landing, about an hour later, I'm on my downwind approach. And then I turned hard, really hard right to come on my final approach. And I spun the wing again, but this time there wasn't enough altitude to recover. So I go down hard. Fortunately, I land in a tree, and then from the tree, I land on a tin roof, and then the wing goes over a set of power lines. Fortunately, it didn't short out, and I'm freaking out. I'm unclipping, and then within 30 seconds, I had just like 50, 60, 70 Guatemalans surrounding that tin roof. And there's already a ladder there waiting for me.
Oh, wow.
And so there's all these like 4'0" indigenous people surrounding me. And I'm just embarrassed, This is just an embarrassing situation. But I made it out, in one piece. And so, don't rent gear in Guatemala.
Wow, so super. It was like parachutal.
It went, yeah. It was going parachutal. It was just shy of going parachutal. So any heavy input on the brakes, and the wing would just go, and that's what happened. So wow. came down in a tree to a tin roof with the wing over some power lines. That's
the three things that I fear the most. It's like.
A tin roof is in the base.
Tin roof is the third one. It's like power lines, trees, then tin roofs. I mean, you hit all three in the first go.
They're all there. I got that one out of my way.
At least you stayed on there, because that would have been
I did stay on there. Yep.
Wile E. Coyote off the end there.
Oh man, I tell you.
So you've been in quite a few places, and so maybe share with some of the places, not just places that you've flown a paraglider, but also your adventures. I'll share some pictures while you're talking, but it seems like you had one. Was that Greenland?
Iceland.
Or Iceland. Okay. Iceland. I always get them mixed up. Here, I'll share
that was
screen with everybody.
Oh, I think that's Mexico.
Boom. There we go. So this one picture,
that's Arizona.
We'll talk about the toes. There's another adventure. Where was that picture? I don't know if I put it in here. I think it was in the email. But so you're in Greenland.
That was Iceland.
Iceland. Okay. And so let me see if I can pull that up. So share some of those adventures.
Well, I first got my itch for traveling. I grew up with a lot of sports, especially combat sports. I did a lot of wrestling and judo and some boxing later on in life. But my first big trip was to Cuba, actually. And I was training out there, wrestling at the time. And that just kind of opened my eyes up to, outside of the United States. I mean, I'm from Mexico, but really I grew up in the U.S. I'd never really traveled much. And so... But that Iceland pick, that was my Euro trip. I took off for a few months, and I had my paraglider. And Iceland is a little tricky because the winds are different out there. They're switching constantly. It's you got to chase the sights a lot more. There isn't like a consistent sight where from this time to this time it's going to be good. And so I found myself the first few days just chasing paragliding sites and not really seeing anything.
Oh.
And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to fly here. I'm going to wait till I get to Austria and Germany and France and Italy and those places. And so I just I rented a car, threw my gear in the back, and I just drove all around the island for a couple of weeks. So that was Iceland.
Did you get to do the Alps?
I flew a few sites in the Alps. It's
nice.
Beautiful. I flew in Austria and Switzerland, France, and Italy.
Oh my
gosh. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
So that's like, I mean, what's left? Like Australia and then India.
Well, I haven't been Africa.
Africa, yeah.
Yeah.
That's epic, man. So how was that? You fly into Europe and you're like, hey, I'm gonna like, because one day I would like to do that, especially when the Patreon supporters really start hitting hot licks up for the show and I can quit my job. I'll go. How did you decide? You know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to Europe, and obviously you got to have some money. You go to Europe, and you're like, I got to find a local paraglider. So you Google local paragliding. Take us through that. How'd
you? My first. Where did I fly first? I think Austria was the first place, and it was just I rented a car most of the time I was there, and we got to understand is paragliding in the U.S. it's just a side hobby. It's a fledgling activity. It's a hobby here in the U.S. and in Europe, it's just like it's life. It's it seems like everyone paraglides. You could fill an entire a couple of cities with only paragliders, and so it's you're in the Alps and you always see gliders in the air. And so all I did was I picked a gondola and I said, I guess this is a paragliding site. So
nice.
So I just went up and
they're just skiing.
Yeah.
Like, what's this guy doing?
Well, it was in the middle of the summer, but yeah. It was,
okay.
So I just went up. I saw everyone launching, and one of the things I noticed about Europe is that there's a really big range of abilities and skills. And so when I saw some guys that looked like they didn't quite know what they were doing, I figured, I can do this. I don't need a side intro. So and I just kind of followed around some of the locals in a couple of sites in Austria. Didn't know any of them. I saw them launching, so I launched with them.
Did anybody talk to you? Anybody confront you? Like,
no, it's not like San Diego. It's not, or Southern California, like you mentioned earlier. It's a tightly knit group of people.
Yeah.
Over there, it's a little more standoffish. Everyone's, it's like I'm the cool guy. It's not as they're not as approachable. I mean, they certainly don't approach you. Whereas here, we get visiting pilots, and everybody's like, "Hey, dude, who are you? Where are you from? What you want to go fly?" And so
it's just Europeans in general. I don't know if I could say that.
Yeah. So, it was kind of like that. I didn't really get those warm, fuzzy feelings out there.
Yeah.
But the flying's epic. It's beautiful flying, and you can fly everywhere. And if you sink out somewhere, you just walk a little, you pick the next gondola up, and you off again.
So you're pretty savvy on the health side of things. And Trey, are you with us? Are you on mic and all that? Can you hear me? Everything good? Okay, I just want to make sure. We're trying to convert Trey to free flight. Just putting it out there.
Soon enough, man. I'll be. I can't wait.
Are you buried in snow right now? By the way.
Oh yeah, we had about 8 inches yesterday, but it's like almost 40 degrees now, so things are melting.
Okay. There's hope. I saw your last video. I was excited for you. You were launching in the nastiest, muddiest. The cloud base was like 20 feet.
Pretty humid. Yeah.
You still sent it. I was like, yeah,
definitely. You gotta go. You gotta go.
I would have said it. So you go to Europe. You hit some of the gnarliest sites. What I was going to ask is, you're pretty healthy. You said you're involved in some what was it? Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
I used to wrestle. I grew up wrestling and judo and a little bit of boxing later on, but I don't really do that anymore. I got you take a few hits to the head and it gets old.
No joke.
I grew up taking hits until I was in my early 30s, and I was like, you know what? I found paragliding. I don't need to get it anymore.
I did boxing too, and my mom came. I didn't even get a fight. It was just sparring, and I got jacked during the sparring, and my mom was crying. And I'm like, I remember that day. That was the day I was like, all right, I'm done. This is horrible. I got hit so hard, my mom cried. So I'm done. I messed around with a little of the one of the Gracies has a shop in Scottsdale, and I went in and rolled on the mats with them for a day, and that was pretty crazy. I learned a bunch of stuff. But
that Grace is no joke.
Oh, those little dudes are so brutal.
Oh man,
I got a little fired up, and this little tiny dude, he was like, "Oh, you want? Come on." And I'm like, he lays on the ground, and I'm like, "All right, this is how we want to start it." Yeah, problem. He put me in an arm bar that I thought I was gonna suffocate from an arm bar. It was brutal. Yeah. But so what I was gonna ask you is have you ever considered, like these guys are training for the X Alps, taking it up to the next level and maybe doing some involving yourself in competitions or anything like that? And have you ever?
I don't have enough big cross country experience. Physically, I can train for that on the non-flying side of something like that, but I just don't have enough big cross country experience to consider that yet. One of the nice things about Southern California is we have the sites and the conditions to train for that sort of thing.
Yeah,
we have very technical flying out here. We have big air flying. We have low-level technical. So we have a big variety of styles of flight that you can train on here in Southern California. But I haven't gotten deep enough to that sort of thing to consider anything like the X Alps.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan shared with us some pretty crazy stuff. You're flying with Ryan, so in my world, you're already there to where it's like, okay, the next step is just let's go far now.
Let's go. Right.
Yeah.
It'll happen this season. We've been, Ryan and Chris, they've been leading the charge this year here in Southern California with some amazing flights early in the season. I mean,
crazy. February.
I've never seen it like this. I mean, it's
breaking records. I hope it stays. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's only going to get bigger and better, but it's just the how early and how good it was so early on, and just these amazing flights was just unbelievable. There were 2 or 3 pilots that just pulled off just some amazing flights so early in the season.
Crazy. Yeah, I'm fired up for this season. We had one day. Well, there was probably like 2 or 3 days last year when I at the end of the good part of the season where I was able to squeeze in a couple. I squeezed in one cross country from Little Black, somehow miraculously stayed in the thermal, me and Russman, and went to Twin Peaks. A couple of the guys went farther. I don't know if you were there that day.
No, I was I think I was in Vietnam at the time.
Oh, wow.
Because I talked to Tony. I was online talking to, he was so excited about that flight that on Facebook he told me about it. And so, but no, I wasn't there for that one.
That was a fun one, by the way. Not that, I have no idea what I'm doing. So when I did it, it was like, I'm doing it. It was so incredible.
I know the feeling,
Landed on the top of Twin Peaks by accident. I'll share that video. You guys go watch that video. It's entertaining. It's the full version too. I didn't cut anything out. We go all the way to Cloud Base, wait for Tony, then we fly across the 15. I don't know.
Isn't that a trip? You look down and then you start running. You look at the traffic and you start running the scenarios. What if I have to throw my reserve right over the 15? And these, this is Southern California freeway where, they'll probably speed up when they see you close to the ground.
Like, oh, look at that. A parachute. I hope they don't make me late.
I know. Sounds about right.
Oh man, I should pull that up. So you've got you're surrounded by incredible pilots. You're doing tandems. Talk to us about, because one day I want to do the tandems, not necessarily at Torrey because it seems a little bit regime-ish, but and I've talked to some of the guys that are like, yeah, I did it, and I'm kind of burnt out on tandems, and I actually don't like tandems anymore, you know, because they did like 1,000 over the weekend. You know, take us through how you got to the place where you're like, you know what, I'm going to do tandems. And so where do you go from there? How can somebody get involved? And
you know, almost everybody who wants to do a tandem, it starts off as kind of like a real romantic, you know, ideal. You know, I'm going to take my family, my friends, my girlfriend. It's going to be great. And so, you know, months, even years later, you spend thousands of dollars, countless of hours, you know, instructions and gear. And then you finally get to that point where you're a tandem pilot and nobody wants to fly with you.
All right.
You know, you take your mom once, you take your dad once, you take your brothers once or twice, and that's it. And you look back on just all the time and money you put into it, and it's kind of sad. But, you know, it's an option. It's, you know, it's an option I have there, and it's, you know, it's and it is cool when you get that passenger that's just stoked to be up there, that is just thrilled. That is a good feeling. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen as much as you think. You know, before you do it, it doesn't happen as much as you think it's going to happen.
They're so focused on their phone and their video.
That's the worst. I've done tandems for Torrey, you know, that whole production line conveyor belt up and down the ridge, passenger after passenger a few times. And it's just infuriating, and it's just kind of insulting when 90% of the flight, you get a passenger just looking at the phone, texting people what that person is doing.
Oh man,
they're posting.
They're videoing the whole flight.
And you know that 10% they're not on the phone. It's just to take the picture and then right back onto the phone.
Yeah,
and it's just, you know, and it takes the fun out of it.
It's like going to a concert, you know, everybody's got their phone out and everybody's taking a video of the same thing, not looking at the concert with their own eyes.
Right? Right? You got Eric Clapton away from you, and you're looking at him through your phone, you know?
Yeah.
Weird.
And then what are you going to do with that? Like, you're going to take that to work and you'd be like, check this out.
That's what I like.
And no one cares. They're like, I'm not going to watch that 15-minute video.
Yeah, dude. Just give me a picture. I'll look at that for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Maybe take a picture or two, and that's all you need. Like,
you're
never going to look at those videos or pictures ever again.
Isn't that so funny? Like, especially the old school crew. Like, I feel like I'm right on the edge of the old school where I've got pictures on here that I'm like, I need this. I'm like a picture hoarder. And then you get that message where you're like, low on memory. You're like, oh.
Gotta go through and realize how much you need to delete.
Yeah. What video should I compromise?
Will I ever do this again?
Yeah. No joke. I just did that the other day. I'm like, why do I even have this? Some of the kid videos, I'm like, oh man, he was so cute when he was small. But I don't even like kids now, so I'm just gonna delete that one.
Yeah, just get rid of them, man. Nobody needs those things.
I have 5 kids, man. You get to the 5th kid, and you're like, yeah, it's just another kid. Just another one.
Just gets routine, huh?
Little hungry mouth. I don't even know your name.
Hey, wifey, after you're done, can you Uber it back from the hospital?
Yeah.
You know, years and years ago, they used to not name the kid for a few months. Until they figured out if it was going to stay alive. No, see if it was stay alive or not.
That's brutal.
Worth the effort.
It's crazy.
We were talking about the whole abortion thing, and I'm pro-life. I want to, I think kids should have a chance. But if there was this law that needed to be written about pro-choice, I was thinking, why don't you wait until they're a teenager and see how they do then?
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, this kid's completely worthless. We're going to go ahead.
Yeah, this ain't going to work out.
We're going to go with the late term abortion on this one.
I wish it was the same with tandem paragliding where you had a cutoff. And if you didn't like your passenger, just drop them. Give them a full refund.
Just give them the refund.
It's okay. I'll still top land.
You crossed the threshold of selfie taking. We're gonna have to let you go.
What was the worst tandem passenger you've ever had?
You know, it varies as far as the type of how bad they are. Like I've had bad passengers who are just talkers, bad passengers who almost make me crash before I even leave the ground. It's there's so much variety that you know, you get the guys. It's always guys too. We're a bunch of, you know, chicken, you know. We're chickens, dude. we're about to launch, and they freak out. They reach up and grab my lines right as we're going to launch. You know,
someone's done that.
I did that once. Yeah, so I had smacked him on the. I smacked him on the helmet. I told him, "Let go!" And I think he was more afraid of me killing him than the fall killing him, so he let go.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So he was trying to abort the mission.
Well, he just, you know, when you go into that instinctive, just kind of survival mode, you just throw your arms, and the first thing and they touch, you latch onto it. Fortunately, he didn't pull on the lines. He just latched on, and the moment I hit him on the head, he let go. But
man,
that must have been awesome. You got Robin standing back there. Ivan, don't hit him. Don't hit the passengers.
But no, nobody saw that one. I hope. I think the guy. I think the guy's wife saw it, and then later it's like, "Why'd he hit you?"
It's probably on his phone.
I had a passenger. We were going to launch, and there was. I couldn't even say we're a foot away from the. We're half an inch from the edge, and just stops. And I feel the wing coming out over in front of me.
Oh no!
And I need him in like the lower back to get him off the hill. And you know, actually there was no help from the wind. Between the adrenaline and just having to get him off the hill, you know, I mustered up that strength. I kind of picked him up and shoved him off, and and there wasn't a lot of tension in the line, so we dropped a few feet, and then, you know, the lines went back into tension, the wing got its shape again, and we were off. But
wow,
man, you know, that's one of the responsibilities you got to consider if you think you wanted to be a tandem pilot.
Woo.
So
yeah, I've talked to a handful of them already, and like Boyer, Tony was like, "Yeah, I sold my wing." I sold my harness.
It sounds like there's a lot more cons than pros, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, if you have an enthusiastic group of friends or family that you know is going to want to do it, it's pretty cool, because they'll, you know, you can really talk to them before the flight, you can get them comfortable, and things can go really smoothly. But when you get perfect strangers like at Torrey Pines, and it's just you don't know who you're getting next. You know, it could be a 70-year-old woman, or a paraplegic, or someone who doesn't speak English. You get this huge variety of people, and that, you know, and all these tandem guys have just crazy stories. Every one of them has stories. So, and yeah.
So we've got there's 31 people watching live. Really appreciate you being on with us. If you're in the chat, we want to take some questions from you if you have anything that you want to ask of any of us. And if you have paramotor questions, you're going to have to direct those more towards Trey and Neil, because I don't have a motor. Maybe one day I'll have one. But I want to just put a quick plug in for the website, paraglidingtalk.com. Go there. If you haven't registered on the site, give me your email. I'm concocting a plan that we can all benefit from being a part of this community, this group on YouTube. And also want to encourage you to go to Patreon and support the show if you can. If you're a baller like that and you can give money to the show, please give money to the show. My goal is actually to be the most not politically correct in asking for money for the show, because you're
good call.
The show.
Good job. You're doing great,
dude.
Just give it. Okay, you need to give something. But no, what I sent out an email to everybody who was who's been a part of the show so far, and I said, listen, for what you pay for a cup of coffee, you know, you can donate $5 a month to the show and keep the show going. But I'm just telling you, it's fun right now, but when it comes time to fly and I'm doing the show like today, Ivan flew right up to the last second and I was thinking about it. Okay. I was like, let's see if I can squeeze this in. I can make this happen. I can fly. But you know what'll happen is I'll come in here last minute and the show will be affected. And we don't want that to happen. If there's money involved, it'll be a lot easier. So go to the Patreon. It's in the description. Click there. Go there and say, I'm going to pledge at least $1. If everybody did $1, I'd be happy. There's 30 people right there. That's $30. By the way, I haven't touched any of that money. There's $100 in there from the Patreon supporters.
Nice.
You guys rock. I'm just saying that's super cool to me. Also, I'm just going to give a little shout out to, there's a website called Steemit. That's Steemit, steemit.com. And I post the videos on steemit.com and I get paid in cryptocurrency. I get paid in Bitcoin. And so, actually here, I'll just show you. I have a little card. It's a Bitcoin card. And so you can slap the money that you get from your videos. If you guys are putting out videos, you don't have to put out videos. It might just be pictures and the description of what you're doing. It's kind of like a blog site. And anyways, the people like your stuff. They'll promote your videos. They'll promote your stuff. And they, instead of a like, they give you money. And based on how much money they have in their account is how much you get. Now, they don't lose any money. It's just you get money. It's pretty slick how it all works. And I'm not going to try to explain it all. But go to steemit.com. And I'm Captain Obvious. Instead of the S at the end, it's a 3. And you can go back and watch this later if you want to sign up. It takes a day to get the email, maybe 2 days. And you start getting paid for your videos. YouTube hasn't paid me anything yet, but yes, my dad in the comments said he'll put in $1.
Right on.
We'll take him flying.
Yeah, right. We got you lined up for a tandem, Dad, as long as you don't pull on the lines or try to stop at the edge. Yeah, right on. So did anybody have any questions? Did you guys see that?
Yeah, there's one question here. What's your favorite tool or object to bring with you when you're flying?
Ooh, good question. Who asked that? We'll go back.
It was Carl.
Carl. Heck yeah.
Oh, is that for my favorite tool? I guess water, a snack. As far as tool, you know, it's I get a kick out of keeping it simple up there because I've seen some decks where, I mean, there's 4, 5, 6 gadgets out there, and all I'm trying to do is get away from everything. So, you know, it's if I'm sight flying, I actually won't use anything. If I think I might go over the back, I'll bring my Vario just to tell me if I'm going up. And that's it. I don't really get to cross country. We really do want a Vario, but as far as gadgets and tools, and you don't really need much. I guess there are a few places where you want to know where you're at as far as airspace, because we fly around a lot of air traffic around here, and sometimes we're above it, and sometimes it's directly above us. And so, like, if you're in the San Bernardino area or kind of the Ramona area, just kind of San Diego area too, the southern part, kind of downtown, and we got Miramar, we got all sorts of airports. And so sometimes you want to know what your airspace limits and boundaries are. But really, you don't need much. It's free flight, guys. It's just go feel it out and fly, you know? That's
I like how your first answer was snack. I make sure I bring a honey bun with me.
A honey bun with me.
Ooh, iced honey bun.
I'm trying to pull up a video right now of my instrument panel. I have a little GPS, little handheld. that is like the last thing. Like if I decide, okay, let's go for the gusto and maybe, you know, head to Laguna or something like that. I've seen those mountains go pretty deep, and I can, you know, my pride would probably take me deep in there. And, you know, you may think, oh yeah, I got this. I know where I'm following this road. I can see that road and this road, that road. But, I know that it's much different when you get on that ground and you're looking and it's just trees. And so I have that little GPS. I think I got it on eBay for $25, and it connects to the satellites. I use Flymaster. I'm sure you use a Flymaster.
Yeah.
And then I have my phone with the Fly Sky High app. If you're, I think it's $15, but it's worth it. Take a peek at that. Yeah. What is this? Another question? Pair perspective. What do you got there? It says Martin Motorworks. He said, Ivan, can you shed some light on the whistleblowing requirement at Torrey Pines for out-of-town pilots? Is it something that is really important or more of a courtesy?
You know, Torrey Pines is one of the easiest sites you can fly, but it can get extremely congested. And the whistleblowing is mainly there's a window, a stretch of about, I don't know what it is, maybe half a mile, where the RCs, the radio controlled airplanes, they fly around. And so the whistleblowing is to let the RC pilots know when you're coming by, because they're so focused on their little plane that sometimes they don't see us. And normally they don't pose much of a threat, but every once in a while you get these giant RCs with, you know, 20+ foot wingspans. Wow. that weigh quite a bit out there, and those are a threat. You know, those can be dangerous to us, and so you really want to let them know when we're out there with the RCs. When there's no RCs, you actually don't need to blow the whistle when there's no RCs. But about 2 years ago, we had a very serious accident, and you actually, Robert, you have one of your guests, Russman. He had a really bad accident with one of those giant RCs, broke his, I think, what was his collarbone or something in midair, and it actually knocked him out for a couple of seconds. And then he's an amazing pilot, so he was able to bring it in with one hand and come in for a top landing. But that was, you know, that's kind of why you want to have a whistle out there and let these guys know that you're out there. But when there's no RCs, you don't need a whistle.
And when you fly with a motor, you don't need a whistle.
Yeah.
It's built in.
Fact.
Dude, I thought they meant by whistleblower like you're ratting people out or something.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that at Torrey. There's a lot at Torrey as well. There's a lot of that.
Neil was like, "Oh, I'm not going to ask this question. This is too political." He put it in the private chat over here. That's awesome.
That's what it was.
Yep. Heck yeah, man. No, I'm glad.
That was a good question, though.
The last couple of shows, I threw some people under the bus by accident. I'm like, oh yeah.
Oops.
You never know.
Mm-hmm.
People flying without ratings, stuff like that. Yeah.
I was a little worried about you when I first met you. I was up on the hill at Blossom, and it was a little gusty, and I asked one of the, I forgot who it was, and I said, "Hey, who's this guy? He's on my hill."
They were like,
I've never seen this guy. Who is he?
He's a miracle. That dude's barely alive. He should be dead by now. We're not sure how he's made it this long.
Well, they told me, they told me your name, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy's self-taught." I think it might have been Tony, actually. And
was it Tony?
It might have been him. The word gets around. There's a guy that's self-taught somewhere out there.
They're the most popular ones.
And so I was just like, all right. I'm going to keep an eye on this guy, help him out if he needs any help. But then I saw you flying, and I could tell that you didn't have years on your belt, but you were doing all the right things. You were staying away from the hill, not doing anything crazy, making sure you had your ground clearance. And so almost right away, I was just like, nah, this guy's fine, dude.
I was just following you. I
don't know how I was on the ground.
Yeah. It's Phil's a really good, really patient instructor. He's been such a huge blessing, and like I've done my fair share of I biffed it hardcore. I full stalled at about, I want to say it was about between 10 and 15 feet. I was up there, full stalled, landed on my back, hardcore, but I kind of rolled. I'll have to show the video some other time. You can go check it out. I've crashed into bushes. I've, damaged my wing. I've had a lot of things that I was looking back. I would have much rather, if I had the money, would have rather just gone and got some training, and would have saved a lot of pain, a lot of heartache. And I got away with a lot of stuff.
You want to know?
Go ahead.
Do you want to know the honest truth? You would have still crashed into trees or bushes. You would have still stalled away. You would have done all the same things. You would have done all the same things.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's a different world, man. When you start, we could probably do a whole show on just the learning aspect of it, because there's so much that you're overwhelmed. And if you're not completely consumed with it, like I was, like every minute, every second, I'm thinking about, okay, what's next? I'm watching videos, studying, reading books at the same time. I mean, it was a horrible addiction in the beginning. It was worse than drugs by far, and probably more expensive. But when the rubber meets the road, you better be like that. You can't be half-hearted and be like, oh, well, I got my license from Santa Barbara, and I'm just I learned from this guy, and I just fly on the weekends and then go to the mountains. Me and Tony were talking about it the other day, and I learned in the mountains because I couldn't go to Torrey until I got my P3. And so I remember flying all over the place, all these sites I should have been flying. And then I show up to Torrey, I'm like, this is it?
This is it?
I mean, I got waked by one of the tandems. I was like, that's nothing. I don't mean nothing. I was talking to some guys on the ground, and they were like, I got totally waked. I thought I was going to full frontal. I'm like, come on, bro.
No.
Come to Little Black with me in the afternoon. It's called Little Black, but it'll jack you up if you're not careful, and especially when you're new. Oh man.
Oh yeah. I was out there. What was it, like 2 weeks ago, and one of the instructors was out there. It was a super strong day. It's actually, I think it was the day that Ryan won all the way to
the distance.
The distance. It was that. I think it was that day. Nice. Because I was asking Ryan who those new guys were, and then the instructor came up, and it's like, oh, okay, they're Torrey students, and they started. The instructor was launching them in these gnarly, freaking strong winds that, Ryan and I were pretty experienced. We were sitting there going, huh, and Phil was also just kind of like, huh. And we hesitated on launching. And so these newbies, they start getting just launched. And they're doing all this. Yeah. They're doing all this scary stuff. And then, and so I go up and I start climbing out, and I'm circling this, I'm working this thermal, high winds, I'm drifting back fast. And there's this guy who's only got a couple of months under his belt, and he's specced out, and he looks terrified, petrified up there.
No.
He looks lost. He looks like he shouldn't be there, He's such a fish out of water, so to speak.
That poor soul.
I felt so bad for him. And I knew he'd be fine if he just kind of kept a straight line, but poor guy. I asked the instructor later, hey, dude, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, he spent the next 40 minutes trying to get down. I was like, wow. Pulling big ears, 40 minutes of just trying to get it out of the air.
That poor guy, he's going to be telling that to everybody.
Yep.
That's going to be his story.
Yep. That was
Dang it. I bet he was freezing too, because that day was like 20 degrees.
He was freezing. He was scared. It was windy.
Taking collapses.
And he was no collapses, but he's just specked out. He can't penetrate. He's just like, oh man. I almost it was well.
And you guys are still on the mountain? You guys hadn't launched yet?
No, at that point Ryan had taken off, and Ryan and Phil took off. And then I actually that's right. I actually ended up bombing out as Ryan was climbing out. That's Little Black. And so I ran back up the hill. Relaunched, and that's when Ryan and Phil had left, and that's when I relaunched, and that poor student was just up there just getting hammered. It's just
Little Black's no joke, bro. You have to pay a price at Little Black. I'm actually grateful that like the majority of my beginner flights were at Little Black because it's so technical. And Trey and Neil, if you ever do free flight, nothing's handed to you, in paramotoring, nothing's handed to you. You're going to have those scares. You're going to have those incidents where you learn a lot of stuff. But every single time I would go to Little Black, it'd be a learning lesson. And there'll always be something. And, for the most part, you look at your weather report and you're like, oh, it's going to be above launch today, 1,000 feet above launch. And that doesn't mean you're going to get above launch. That just means the possibility is there. And Little Black will either you can have one guy go and he'll go to the moon, and then the next guy will go straight to the bailout. And you have about I'd say 30 seconds that if you don't find it in that first 30 seconds, forget it. You're going to the bailout. Maybe a minute.
Yeah, that's Little Black.
It sounds like a tough place where, like you said, though, you're going to learn a lot, and especially when you're beginning, that's the way to go.
Ridge soaring, not it doesn't exist there. It's like maybe 20 feet wide. What were you going to say?
It's considered a P2 site. It's considered a beginner site.
Right.
It's small, but it's but we have that variety here in San Diego. We're lucky. We have that kind of variety where we get a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Well, we're at 7:15. We went a little over. Really appreciate everybody coming on, being a part of the show. If you guys have any other questions that you want to shoot to him, I don't know if I'm missing anything. Neil, Trey, if you saw anything, I haven't been paying attention to the chat too much.
We're looking good. Trey, did you see anything?
Yeah, no, Neil, you picked it up.
Sweet.
All right.
So again, really appreciate you guys. We'll have a quick after show and make sure. Hit the subscribe button.
One question. Does Ivan, do you prefer forward or reverse launch?
I always like reverse because I can see everything that the wing's doing. Even in zero wind, I'll do like a real aggressive reverse launch where I'll take a couple of steps forward and really yank the wing up. I've seen and heard of too many accidents doing forward launches where people don't really know what's going on with the wing, and they'll have a bad inflation. It'll go sideways, and that's just kind of what I'm used to too. I like reverse launches.
Zero wind reverse launch. That's pretty epic.
It went, like I said, if you get I did that a lot in Europe. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy because in Europe everyone does forward launches. Yeah, but if you take a couple of steps forward and really get that momentum going, you can see the first halfway up, you can see that the lines are clear. You just turn around and run it out. It's not that bad.
Cool.
I love it.
Right on.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Really appreciate you. Make sure you go to paraglidingtalk.com so you can find out what's coming up with the next show. Special announcement. Next week, the show will not be on Thursday. It will be Friday at 6 p.m. So next week's show is Friday, not Thursday. So Friday night, 6 p.m., we're going to be having Woody's Gamer Tag. You don't want to miss that. He's a paramotor pilot, and he's going to have some incredible things to add to the show. We're going to have a great time. We saw him show up last week in the chat, which is cool. He's like a YouTube star. He has 1.1 million subscribers. So, I mean, the guy's well known. It'll be a great thing for the show. And don't forget to go to the Patreon and support the show financially with the Patreon. Really appreciate all the guys that are supporting the show now. I say we can't do it without you. I could do it without you, just wouldn't be as fun. So really appreciate you guys and your support for the show. And we will talk to you soon next week, Friday. Have a great night.